I'm Eric Anderson. Tonight on KPBS Evening Edition, Governor Jerry Brown is pitching a plan to reform prison sentences in California. Fast food lovers should check their bank accounts. A major chain is reporting a possible breach in their payment system. And where's the beef industry going to reduce its carbon footprint? KPBS Evening Edition starts right now. Good evening. Thanks for joining us. Governor Jerry Brown wants voters to overhaul the California criminal justice sentencing system. Today, he announced that he's backing a potential November ballot measure. It would give credits to inmates who complete rehabilitation programs and would allow nonviolent inmates to earn early parole after serving their full sentences.
Not just sitting around not doing anything bad, but rather actually earning credits for what will be evaluated as good behavior and education and rehabilitative achievement.
Currently, sentences often grow with enhancements such as gang involvement or repeat offenses. San Diego County District Attorney Bonnie Dumanis joined the governor in making today's announcement, along with other public safety officials. But statewide law enforcement groups still have some concerns, and legislative Republicans are criticizing the proposal as a safety risk to law-abiding Californians. A handful of activists are continuing their occupation at a federal wildlife refuge in Oregon after one of their number was killed last night during a traffic stop. 8 others were arrested during that same stop. The man who was killed, Robert Lavoy Finicum, was interviewed earlier this month. He told reporters that he wanted a peaceful occupation. There are conflicting reports about the shooting and whether Finicum charged agents before being shot. Local law enforcement is asking the remaining activists to go home.
Some of these folks have spent a lot of time in town trying to stir some issues within the community. If it was as simple as just waiting out some folks down there to get out of some buildings, we could have waited a lot longer. But this has been tearing our community apart.
The activists started their occupation back on January 2nd to protest federal land restrictions and prison sentences for 2 local ranchers. PBS NewsHour will have more on this story coming up at 7. Wendy's fast food restaurants may have been the victim of a data breach. The problem involves the company's point-of-sale terminals, where customers can pay with credit or debit cards. Wendy says there have been reports of fraudulent charges made elsewhere after cards were used in some restaurants. Now, they've hired a cybersecurity firm to look into the problem and are advising customers to check their accounts. Hundreds of homeless people gathered at downtown San Diego's Golden Hall today. They were there for a chance to get in touch with volunteers providing a variety of social and medical services, grooming care, and counseling. One of the longest lines was for a free state of California ID. The San Diego Housing Commission is reaching out to help people who are struggling. The Commission's Rick Gentry says this event is part of the city's effort to find housing for 1,000 homeless vets.
We believe that we need to retarget the Commission's resources to provide housing navigators, staff people as housing navigators to help the homeless individuals locate a suitable unit to live in. And then we will come up with the money to not only provide rental assistance, but to help them providing that security deposit.
The Project Homeless Connect event is designed to begin the process of getting people off the street. Volunteer Rosemary Johnston says it's important to reach out and make a connection.
Getting out of homelessness is a process for many people, and it's all about building relationships and developing trust with service providers.
City officials say one key to fighting homelessness is making sure there's available housing. That's tough in San Diego because property values continue to go up. Organizers of today's event say they served 1,215 people today, and they believe that that's a record. A judge will determine whether a 3-year-old case involving San Diego hotel fees can go forward. The nonprofit group San Diegans for Open Government sued the city and its tourism marketing district over what the nonprofit calls a tax levied without a public vote. Now, the judge heard arguments today about whether the nonprofit has the right to challenge the city on those fees. iNewsSource reporter Chris Young was there. Chris, what exactly were the two sides arguing about?
Today's arguments were very narrowly focused on whether San Diegans for Open Government has legal standing to sue over payments made by hotel owners to promote tourism. Attorney Corey Briggs is representing the nonprofit in this case. He's made a name for himself by suing government agencies and developers. Briggs told the judge that San Diegans for Open Government has the right to sue in part because one of its members paid the hotel assessment in question. The city and the marketing district disputed that claim. The defendants also took aim at the relationship between San Diegans for Open Government and Briggs. The attorney for the marketing district said that nonprofit is merely an alter ego of Briggs and that Briggs uses the nonprofit to sue agencies and collect attorney's fees.
So why is this an important issue?
The stakes here are really high. The payments in question are supposed to generate more than $1 billion over 40 years. If the judge rules that San Diegans for Open Government has the right to sue, the lawsuit will move forward and those payments will remain in limbo. But a ruling in favor of the defendants could put an end to the lawsuit.
And when should we expect a decision in this case?
The judge didn't specify exactly when, but he said he'll make his ruling very soon.
iNewsSource reporter Chris Young. Chris, thank you. Carlsbad is being highlighted as a model of water management, and the federal government is sending more money to California to improve water systems. KPBS reporter Matt Bowler joins us with the story.
The EPA is making $182 million available for wastewater infrastructure projects in California as a loan with 1% interest. Carlsbad borrowed $30 million to expand its water recycling capabilities and built a new facility on Avenida Encinas. The facility will turn wastewater into irrigation water and will nearly double Carlsbad's recycled brownwater output. Carlsbad Mayor Matt Hall says now 23% of their wastewater is recycled, but he expects to recycle much more within 5 years.
We also plan to recycle and use 100% of Carlsbad's wastewater during the summer months. I want to say that one more time. 100% of all of our effluent during the summer months will be reprocessed to be used in our medians, our parks, and our golf courses.
Environmental Protection Agency spokesman Jared Blumenfield says Carlsbad's water recycling plan is an example for the state and country.
When I go to other parts of the state or to Arizona, Nevada, other parts of the country, I say, you know what, you need to talk to Mayor Hall in Carlsbad because that's exactly what you should be doing.
The EPA estimates the entire country needs $271 billion in wastewater systems. California alone needs $26 billion. Matt Bowler, KPBS News.
Carlsbad is also home to the Poseidon desalination plant, which produces 50 million gallons of drinking water a day through reverse osmosis. On the other side of the country, some scientists at MIT are rethinking the way that desalination works. Take a look.
We are working on changing the way water desalination operates by changing the materials that we use today in water desalination. When you try to take salt out of water, you are forcing the water part of the salt water across a filter, and the fresh water comes out on one side and the salt stays on that first side. That filter is known as a membrane. For about 50 years, water desalination has used polymer membranes, but we see potential in changing properties of that membrane to be able to make desalination cheaper, better, faster for everybody to be able to get water. We're looking at taking that same form factor, but replacing the plastic material with something called graphene. So graphite's been around for decades in our pencil lead. Graphene was first isolated in 2003, and a chunk of graphite was placed on a piece of Scotch tape and was peeled apart many times until there was an atomically thin layer on one of the sheets.
If you push water through a membrane that's that thin, then basically you're using the least amount of energy possible to separate the fresh water from the seawater. Because we live in this era of materials design, we can rethink the membrane from scratch. So the question is not how could we make the current membrane a little bit better, but what if we just start over? We tend to name the era we live in by the material that is most important in that era. There was the Stone Age, there was the Bronze Age, Iron Age, and now I think we're in this really exciting place where you can no longer name your age, because we're in a place where we can design any material we want.
California lawmakers are putting a spotlight on high-speed rail projects. The legislators are called a hearing today to review the proposed price and timetable of Governor Jerry Brown's controversial bullet train project. That after media reports were calling some of those numbers into question. Officials announced projections that the rail system will actually cost $68 billion. That's around a 200% more than the price tag approved by voters.
There are a range of uncertainties here, so I can't look you in the eye and tell you it'll be $68 billion.
An official 2016 business plan for the project will be released in the coming weeks. Caltrans says it needs nearly $6 billion to fix aging streets and highways across the state. The agency is looking at a new road tax to get that money. Drivers would be taxed by the number of miles they travel. That would replace a 30-cent per gallon state gasoline tax that we currently pay. State officials say that tax doesn't raise enough money because the growing number of hybrid drivers buy less gas.
That the gas tax, which is our major source of funding for transportation, is actually failing to keep pace with the demands and the needs that we have for taking care of California's transportation system. And we're going to...
Caltrans plans to start a test of the road charge this summer with about 5,000 drivers. They're looking for volunteers to take part. State lawmakers introduced a bill today that would force the University of California to limit the number of out-of-state and international students that they enroll or face state funding cuts.
I think that University of California should be first and utmost for the benefit of students of California. And what we've seen recently is University of California enrolling more and more out-of-state and international students.
Out-of-state students pay 3 times as much as resident students for tuition, about $38,000 compared to $12,000. The bill is meant to address a trend of UC accepting growing numbers of lucrative non-resident students. Lawmakers argue the system is a taxpayer-funded institution and UC is obligated to serve California students first. Regulations are underway for the fantasy sports industry in California. State lawmakers passed a measure today that would legalize the games and require operators to pay regulatory fees and to be licensed. The bill has been sent to the state Senate for approval. Critics say that fantasy sports are a form of gambling that can only be approved by voters. The National Football League says everything is on track for Super Bowl 50. Workers are getting Levi's Stadium ready for the big game in Santa Clara, California, with new turf grown especially for the Super Bowl. Forecasters say, however, there may be a significant chance of rain on game day.
If weather happens, and so be it. We're prepared to, to work with it and plan accordingly to make sure that everything still performs at the highest level possible for the Super Bowl.
The Denver Broncos and the Carolina Panthers will be on the field on February 7th. Temperatures are still on the rise in San Diego with plenty of sunshine in the coming days. KPBS weather reporter Molly Cochran gives us more on what we can expect this week.
Well, we have seen some cloud cover across California, but other than that, the pattern's relatively quiet. That's going to be changing, though, as we head into the upcoming weekend. Now, here's a look at our satellite and radar over the past 6 hours. A lot of the shower activity sticking to the Pac Northwest. So other than a few clouds shifting into LA and also San Diego, it's been relatively dry and also will stay that way for the next couple days. That does include the interior sections from Borrego Springs back towards Mount Laguna as we head into the rest of tonight. Now, one thing I want to mention is that we do have some hazardous beach conditions, some high surf from the later half of the week forward, and also some dangerous swimming conditions. So we are looking at the threat for some rip currents. So just keep in mind, definitely might want to check in with the lifeguard if you are planning on swimming or doing any surfing over the next couple days. Here's a look at tonight. Dry skies out there from San Diego to Chula Vista, so shouldn't have any worries if you're trying to get home from work work early or if you have any late night travel plans. Temperatures generally pretty close to where we should be coming in for this time of year. 39 tonight in Oceanside, so the light jacket doing just fine. Also in the mid 40s for Chula Vista, and temperatures on the rise for San Diego, coming in at 51 for an overnight low. We're going to watch the mild air continue to creep our way into San Diego County. This area of high pressure, we get that clockwise flow here, really pumping in some warmer air by the time we head into Thursday afternoon. So temperatures coming in a few degrees above average and plenty of bright sunshine. Really, what more could you ask for as we head into Thursday afternoon? Here's a look at our 5-day extended forecast along the immediate coastline. So Thursday, temperatures in the lower 70s along the coast. That's a solid 5 degrees above average for this time of year. 68 for Friday, lots of sunshine. Get out and enjoy yourself. Also take advantage of that nice day for Saturday. Pretty seasonable. We're coming in right where we should be for this time of year. By Sunday, we have a pretty potent system that we're starting to watch. Could bring in some occasional rain for the immediate coast, and it will cool us off by the time we head into the later half of Sunday and also into Monday. Farther inland, pretty similar setup. Temperatures in the upper 60s for Thursday and also Friday with plenty of bright sunshine. Then as we check in for Sunday, periods of rain, also a little bit more windy and also some thick cloud cover. The mountainous regions going to be a little bit cooler by the time we head into Sunday. We're in the lower 40s, and we will be watching for some periods of snow as our overnight low dips below the freezing mark. Across the desertous regions, things are looking good, heating up. 79 degrees for a high on Friday with plenty of sunshine, cloud cover, and showers coming our way by Sunday. Molly Cochran, KPBS News.
A cattle industry convention is underway right now at the San Diego Convention Center downtown. Tonight, it includes an award ceremony recognizing environmental stewardship. Now, greenhouse gas emissions have become a big concern for beef producers. Beef is off the charts when it comes to climate impact, with emission levels that are higher than electricity, coal, and other industries. Grant Gerlach of the Harvest Public Media looks at the future of meat production for those who make the meat and those who eat it.
Meat drives the economy in many communities in the Midwest and other parts of the country. But the process of making meat also has a global impact on the environment and the climate. According to the United Nations, 14% of human greenhouse emissions come from livestock. That includes everything from the fuel and fertilizer it takes to grow feed to the waste the animals put out themselves. But not all animals have the same footprint. When you break it down, 8% of livestock emissions come from poultry, about 9% come from pork, and then there's beef. Beef cattle account for 40% of global livestock emissions. That's weighing on the industry. And next we'll visit 2 farms with different ideas on how to grow without adding to that climate impact. Joan Ruskamp starts her day checking the lots at her feed yard near Dodge, Nebraska.
I'll make sure everybody gets up. You know, if there's a lame one, he'll tend to stay laying down, so we want to make sure they're up and moving.
Meanwhile, her husband Steve serves up a breakfast of hay and corn to 4,000 hungry cattle.
There's an exact amount of pounds that each pen will receive. Younger cattle that are growing have more hay and less corn. Cattle that are finishing and putting on more muscle are getting more corn and less hay.
Nebraska has more than 2 million cattle in feedlots like this, making it one of the top cattle feeding states in the nation. But whether it's a feedlot in Nebraska, Kansas, or Texas, it's built to fatten up cattle in a hurry. In only 6 months' time, they can pile on around 1,000 pounds of meat. Joan Ruskamp says the secret is their stomach.
Cattle have a rumen that does amazing things with feed. So they're eating all these things I don't want to eat, and they're giving me a great burger, a great steak, a great roast to eat in the end.
But the same cow stomach that turns corn into meat also has a troubling side effect. As they eat corn or grass, cattle regurgitate methane, a greenhouse gas many times more powerful than carbon dioxide. In fact, when it comes to global greenhouse gas emissions, cattle are one of the worst offenders.
If you look globally and you just compare every sector, I'm talking electric utilities, steel, automobiles, beef, globally, beef is at the top, okay? The highest emissions per dollar of output, higher than electric utilities globally.
The cattle industry is trying to get a grip on how to reduce that footprint. Kim Stackhouse-Lawson is the sustainability director for the National Cattlemen's Beef Association. She's been researching which parts of the industry contribute the most emissions.
70% of beef's carbon footprint actually happens on the ranch at the cow-calf level.
Stackhouse-Lawson says, in a way, the U.S. actually has a head start over the rest of the world when it comes to controlling the carbon footprint of cattle. And that's because U.S. feedlots are the most efficient at turning pounds of feed into pounds of beef.
Cattle have gotten bigger. That's from genetic improvements, so we've been very focused on maximizing resource use.
Go back 50 years to 1965. At that time, a steer went to slaughter weighing right around 1,000 pounds. Today, with better beef genetics and nutrition, that same animal weighs over 1,300 pounds. With fewer cattle, the U.S. produces 30% more beef. If the rest of the world was as efficient as the United States, it would go a long way in cutting global greenhouse emissions from cattle. But not every country can grow feed like the Midwest. And some believe the current system relies too much on fields of corn and soybeans that add to the environmental cost. They want to move beef away from feedlots and row crops.
We're rewriting history. We want to change the way things are done, and we want to do it with a group of cattle that fit with our nature situation and for a lot of other people. So, suck calf, girlies. Come on, let's go, girls. Suck calf.
Del Fike raises cattle in southeastern Nebraska. They never go to a feedlot. Instead, they start and finish their lives feeding on pasture, designed to grow on grass, not grain.
They're engineered to do everything on forage like cows were intended.
The switch to grass-fed beef was a huge change for Fike. Until a couple years ago, he farmed 7,000 acres of corn and soybeans and fed cattle in a conventional feedlot. Now he's down to around 500 acres, nearly all grass.
You can have more cows, more pounds, and do it in a way that is better for the environment if you use the right genetics.
Fike says keeping cattle on grass takes crops like corn and soybeans out of the picture, along with the fuel and fertilizer needed to grow them. That cuts carbon emissions. Also, planting prairie where crops used to be pulls excess carbon out of the air and stores it in the soil.
This was all cropland, so this would be highly erodible land.
It's true grass-fed cattle do a lot to save carbon, but strictly in terms of greenhouse emissions, they're still at a disadvantage. Kim Stackhouse-Lawson says it's because of efficiency. At the feedlot, she says a calf is ready for slaughter by the time it's 18 months old.
If we were grass finishing an animal, they might be anywhere from 2 to 2.5 years old before they reach the same finished endpoint.
Since grass-fed cattle have more time before slaughter, they typically have a larger footprint. But Stackhouse-Lawson says at the same time, keeping cattle on pasture provides benefits for wildlife habitat and water.
A grass-finished system might have a smaller water footprint because oftentimes irrigation is used to water crops. So it's a trade-off, and it's about balancing those trade-offs.
There are different ways to meet the growing appetite for beef in the U.S. and abroad, and they each have something to offer. Feedlots are efficient.
The whole reason I'm here doing this is to feed people.
Grass is green.
Just let the cow be a cow.
But that's the challenge for the beef industry in a climate-conscious world, finding a way to meet that demand while keeping the carbon footprint of cattle in check.
I'm Judy Woodruff. On the next News Hour, Miles O'Brien unpacks new research on the potential of artificial intelligence. That's Wednesday on the PBS News Hour.
The Farmers Insurance Open starts tomorrow. That's the annual San Diego PGA golf tournament that's been held at Torrey Pines since 1968. Today, golfers hitting the green for the Zurich Pro-Am part of that tournament. And early birds got a chance to enjoy the scenery before the crowds crush in tomorrow.
I'm a fan. I'm hoping Phil does well, and Ricky, and I just enjoy watching players.
Favorite Hometown favorite and 5-time major champion Phil Mickelson will be playing this week, as well as 4th-ranked Ricky Fowler and last year's Farmers winner Jason Day. The Farmers Open starts tomorrow morning. It continues through Sunday. Recapping tonight's top stories, California Governor Jerry Brown says he wants voters to approve a ballot measure in November that would affect thousands of state prison inmates. It would also significantly change current law. He announced a proposal that could cut the amount of time that felons serve in prison and how juveniles are tried as adults. The measure would increase sentencing credits for inmates who complete rehabilitation programs. Organizers of Project Homeless Connect say they served 1,215 homeless people today at Golden Hall. They believe it's a record for the 10-year-old event, which provides a variety of social and medical services. And Wendy's fast food restaurants may have been the victim of a data breach. The problem involves the company's point-of-sale terminals where customers can pay with credit or debit cards. Wendy's says there have been reports of fraudulent charges made elsewhere after the cards were used in some of their restaurants. They've hired a cybersecurity firm to look into the problem and are advising customers to check their accounts. You can find tonight's stories on our website, kpbs.org/evening edition. Thanks very much for joining us. We'll be back here again tomorrow night. Have a great evening.